I found it painful. I hated myself actually for a large part of it. I felt amazing. I was getting all these numbers and I felt my angels were speaking to me and all this guidance was happening. I think that when I went through what I would believe to be my spiritual awakening, actually it was very dark and I felt like I was in the chambers of hell. I did my time, I cried through nights or darkness till I reached the light. I wouldn't change the challenges, they turned me to a dime. I used to think I wasn't perfect. The truth is I still don't, but it don't hurt, because if you ain't got work, then how you gonna grow? What's up guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Holly Williams and this channel and my work goes under In Me Arten, which means sharing the light that is in me. Of course, that light was cultivated in the darkness. Anyway, let's get on to the actual topic. So the process of spiritually awakening. And I guess the first thing that comes to my mind when I think about spiritually awakening or the spiritual awakening is difficult, painful, frustrating, hard, as far from spiritual as you could possibly imagine. Do you know what I mean? If you could imagine what spiritual felt like, I feel like the spiritual awakening process feels the complete opposite of what you expect spiritual to feel like. We have all these terms, light workers and like this and like that. But really, I think that when I went through what I would believe to be my spiritual awakening, actually it was very dark and I felt like I was in the chambers of hell. That doesn't necessarily mean that in the actual physical place that you're in, like location-wise, is terrible, or that the circumstances are awful and you're being tortured or anything like that. But in my mind, my mind tortured me a hell of a lot. I mean, I think the spiritual awakening process goes in phases, and the initial phase, let's say the initial phase, is the opening of the gates. And that really does feel like bliss. That feels spiritual, that feels incredible, that feels beautiful, because you maybe meet somebody that sort of I don't know, they just do something. You might move location, you might meet somebody, something might occur, and all of a sudden this whole new world of information gets sort of thrown upon you. Do you know what I mean? And that is what I would say the opening of the gates. Or you could even have a near-death experience, when you come out of that with this other idea of life. Anything. It doesn't have to be a person. For me it was a person, and that's why I say person. He opened my gates for me, and literally my mind was open to a new world of wonder. I felt amazing. I was getting all these numbers and I felt my angels were speaking to me and all this guidance was happening, and I felt so spiritual. Do you know what I mean? And that phase is bliss. That initial kind of thing. And what I believe is that those insights, those flashes, those synchronicities, those messages that come from your angels or come from you is spirit. Do you know what I mean? And I think that is spirit kind of constantly saying, yes, there's more, yes, there's more, yes, there's more, yes, there's more. Right? But because we haven't actually gone through the awakening process, though that might feel like the awakening, because we haven't gone through the awakening process, we're getting kind of these messages from spirit and these new ideas from spirit, but the driver of our vehicle, the driver of our body is still ego, right? And so maybe we get this flash of insight that comes from spirit, but ego takes the insight and molds it or shapes it and kind of almost plasters it or covers this insight from spirit with a layer of wants and desires, because that's what happens on this material plane. We have wants and desires for material, for fame, for recognition, and yes, there is a message from spirit giving us guidance, but ego wraps it in its own sort of ball. Do you know what I mean? And so we walk the path from the perspective of ego, but we are getting flashes of insight from spirit. But we so love those flashes of insight that, we do really feel super spiritual. So it's great. Anyway, what happens then is, you cultivate, maybe I would say you start to cultivate a new image of what it is that you want. And it is definitely more spiritual, though it is still crafted by the ego. The ego still kind of maps up this plan, I'd like to say, at least for me, and maybe for everybody. The ego is still in charge of driving the vehicle. And so the ego is the one who has the plan. And the plan is, yes, spiritually oriented, but also there is a lot of ego that is in it. We need these results to be, to build our self-esteem. We need these results to build our material, to build our wealth. We want to have the nice house on Instagram that, makes us look very spiritual, but sometimes spiritual is in that sometimes the truest spirit is in absence of material. Do you know what I mean? But we still try to build this material world around us, right? And so, yes, we kind of walk out on this path trying to craft this new image that is more in alignment with spirit than our previous one, but it's definitely still ego fueled. And we go for it. And, because spirit is in absence of material, we perhaps have to go through a whole bunch of challenges that are linked to this material plane. That doesn't mean we have to lose material. It just means that perhaps the wants and desires that our ego wants don't either fulfill us if we get them, or we just struggle to actually reach those. And we have to go through this battle of, of things that are occurring that teach us skills, that teach us resilience, that teach us how to manage the dark, that teach us how to navigate the dark, that teach us to generate the light within us, that teach us how to become aware of the ego, how to become aware of ourselves, right? And that process is painful, because it just is. Our ego's being challenged, it's being rejected, it's facing everything that it doesn't want to face. And I think that is when, we kind of step into the dark. So initially we're kind of like the Fool in the tarot deck. Don't know if you know much about tarot deck, but the Fool, this is how I see it anyway. The Fool steps out with his thing, his little bag, and he's all chirpy. Do you know what I mean? He looks happy. He's ready to embark on a journey. And there's, the scenery behind is amazing, except he's about to step off of a cliff and there's a crocodile in the water. And so he's about to step into something that, he doesn't really know that there might be challenges. This is how I see it. But he's got pure spirit kind of pushing him to do that. And and then obviously he's going to walk off the cliff into territory that he probably wasn't expecting, because otherwise he wouldn't be like walking so cheerfully into it. And so, yes, we have this vision. We see these great big gates and everything that lies beyond them is beautiful and blissful. And we step out thinking, there's those gates. I'm just going to walk straight towards them down that beautiful winding path. And as soon as you take that step, you kind of fall off a cliff and you're in darkness, right? And you've got to work out, where the hell did those gates go? How do I get to them? And what the fuck is down here? Do you know what I mean? And what the hell goes on in my mind? And what are all these insecurities and fears and worries and things that I have that I actually still have to work through? And yeah, that process is challenging for sure. You meet people that challenge your ego, that, challenge aspects of yourself you never thought you would come across. And it's painful, I think. I found it painful. I hated myself actually for a large part of it. Felt like, how can I have these thoughts and feelings? Like I'm meant to be spiritual, but spiritual, and I hate to even use that word. I'm meant to be spiritual, but I'm having all these angry thoughts and these hateful thoughts and these things that I don't want to be thinking and feeling because they're not spiritual. I should be feeling and expressing love all the time, but I feel the complete opposite. And that is torture when you want to express love and you're struggling to do it and your ego is expressing hate. That's why I found it particularly painful and particularly, torturing. And, I think that then what happens is you continue to walk from ego, and your ego still wants what it wants, and it's challenged and rejected and beaten and pushed around. And eventually, this is the part that signifies almost the end of the spiritual awakening, and that process from the step one, the opening of the gates, to kind of coming to this ending, the actual awakening, could be long. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. If I think about it, I feel like I've only just got to that ending point, and I started getting this sort of synchronicities when I was 21 and I'm now 30. And it took time, and I think I've just sort of come out of, I've gotten to this point and now I'm ready to walk on. So anyway, what happens in the spiritual awakening is eventually your ego has just been knocked about so much and it's been beaten so damn much that you just kind of sit there and you go, why is it that, where is it that I'm even going? And why do I want to even go there? As ego says that, why am I going? What is it that I want and why am I going there? What is this vision that I had of the gates? And if I don't get it, why does it even matter? Why do I have to fight for this? Why am I fighting? Why am I fighting every single day? And, because in the fight is where I get freaking beaten. Like, you know, like, what's the point? And what I think that is I think it's the surrendering of the ego. And the ego finally going, okay, you know, I give up. Not, and I don't want to say I give up, but why am I chasing wants and desires, you know, as if they're needs, you know, as if they're actually necessary for me to survive as a being. That's when I think spirit truly comes through, because the ego just goes, I don't need to drive anymore, you know, and then spirit comes and goes, and now I can drive the vehicle. And so in that place, in that place, spirit comes in and everything sort of becomes bright again. You know, everything is lightened because now the spirit tells the ego what to do. And we don't hate the ego. The ego isn't to be hated because the ego contains both our strengths and weaknesses. For example, if your desire is to be seen, right, you might feel like you fight for your recognition and you might knock other people down in the process, for example. And that's your weakness. That's the weak aspects of it. But at the same time, your strength is that you feel comfortable to speak to people in large crowds, for example. And that's a strength. It's not a weakness. And so ego is still going to be the one that gets you to stand up, but spirit is going to deliver the message through ego, if you know what I mean. And so they need to get that balance where they work together. And at that point, when the ego surrenders to its wants and desires, that's when spirit can truly come through and start directing and working alongside ego to spread a message, to do whatever it is that needs to be done in your incarnation, in your lifetime, with your path. Spirit and ego go on to walk together. You can see the vision of the gates again. You know what I mean? It's in the distance. You're not attached to that vision. You're just walking towards it. And you get those same demons that pop up and they try and sway you, but you just watch them now because you've learned how to just observe. You've learned how to not give in to those things, but they are still going to test you. You know, it's ego and spirit together, but ego can rise and try and take over. But what you have now is this ability to be so self-aware that you can understand these challenges when they come up. You can understand when you're walking towards the gates and, you know, something challenges the ego, and you, instead of just continuing to walk past it and observe it, you're stopping and you're looking at it for too long, and you're about to get in a fight with it, you know, or you're about to sort of, you know, you're basically operating from ego. You become aware of that, and you can tone it down, and you can direct that energy, and you can be with it. You can sit with it comfortably because you've now got a growth mindset. Then you walk on towards the gates, and I think this is where I am anyway. You walk on towards the gates and you're about to walk through them, and you don't really know what sits on the other side, but what you do have now is wisdom. You have a guidebook that you've used all through those challenges, and you know that there may be challenges on the other side because you're stepping into a new realm, and so new aspects of yourself are going to be challenged. You're going to experience things you haven't experienced before, and so of course you're going to be challenged, but now you have a different way of thinking. You have a different attitude, and that is the benefit of the spiritual awakening. You have spirit there and ego, but a completely different attitude. So you have this super powerful driving force of spirit. You have ego that still gets tested and challenged and beaten sometimes, but this ego has surrendered once, and it's gone through the battle, and it knows what to do now when it is tested and challenged. And you have this guidebook, and you refer to that, and you create new guidebooks as you go. And I think that that's what occurs anyway. I do believe then I am going to walk through the gates at some point, or I'm even beginning to walk through the gates. And so I can only talk about the rest of the spiritual awakening process as I go through it. But basically, you know, what I'm trying to say is that I think that the process isn't just like, it sounds like a spiritual awakening. It sounds like it's something that can occur overnight, that can occur over a week. But I think it's an ongoing thing. And yeah, we will only know as we travel really what that process is. But that's how I see it. If you resonate with that, please let me know where you are. What phase are you at? Are you at the opening of the gates? Are you at the stepping off of the cliff and the building of the bloody pavement in the dark? Has spirit just come through? Have you just surrendered the ego? Are you walking through the gates now? Or are you beyond that? You know, are you in the next realm with different energies? Are you in the newness and being challenged, but also expressing spirit? yeah, let me know where you're at. And yeah, if you like this video, if you like my content, subscribe to my channel because I'll have heaps more coming. And if you made it this far, obviously I appreciate you watching my video. Thank you very much. And yeah, I guess I will see you in the next video.